So if you're experiencing back pain when you're running, there can be a number of different reasons why you're getting it. I mean, if we're ruling out any sort of serious problems and focusing on just general achiness, stiffness, we're not really being concerned about any sort of serious pathology going on, then what we're thinking of then, first and foremost, is relating back to last week's post about your glutes and the importance that they have in both stabilising the hip and as a result stabilising the torso. So if your glutes are fatiguing, you'll get your hips will drop from one side over the other. This will result in more lateral bending through the torso, which will increase the demands on the spinal muscles to counteract that bending, which is basically placing more work on them than they're expecting to happen through the run. So you just build up the fatigue, the stiffness, tightness comes from that just because they're working so hard to actually maintain that upright torso where they shouldn't really be having to do that kind of work, which should have been taken care of by the glutes. So basically it's an increased load on the spinal muscles that creates this situation. Another one what you can get is, and sometimes in conjunction with this, sometimes on its own, is how your arm swing is. You'll often see runners where they will rotate around the shoulder girdle, so we'll get this kind of movement happening rather than a backwards and forwards movement of the arms, which are really essentially just moving straight, backwards and forwards. Then this rotation then requires to be counterbalanced further down, because you're basically going to start rotating like that as you're running. So you're going to get more rotation in the lumbar spine and pelvis. The lumbar spine is pretty good at flexion and extension, but just by design it's not great at rotation. It can rotate, it just doesn't have a great amount of rotation in it. Again, you're just increasing the demands on it beyond what you would normally be expecting of it. So again, you build up the fatigue and the smaller muscles around there, you get that tightness, you're just trying to limit that excessive movement that's happening. So it just builds up. So on top of the increased lateral flexion, you're getting this increased rotational movement perhaps. Then further down again, we'll look at the hamstrings. The hamstrings have two roles really when we're running. One is to stabilise the knee, and the other is to extend the hip. The knee stability one is almost what you're thinking of here, is through that sort of from ground contact through that mid stance phase, the knee angle shouldn't really change very much until you're finally driving off. If you're lacking that ability, we tend to then to see that we're not absorbing or transmitting forces as well as we would do normally. So you're actually getting a lot more force reaching the hip than you might have done previously, and as such across and up and into the lumbar area, where again you're just going to have to absorb more than is expected. Then finally you could be thinking in terms of how your technique is. Technique is probably be about third. Adam Meekins has an injury reduction pyramid, as he calls it, which is, I think, is really good. And at the bottom of it is you're managing your training load. The second part is having strength training, and this goes across all sports, it's not specific to running. And then we have movement skill. And movement skill for running is obviously your running technique. Now the arm swing portion of it comes into your technique. If you can narrow that down, get that much more a backwards forwards movement, where you're concentrating on actually just pushing the elbow back the way, not swinging it out to the sides, that'll help improve things. You also want to be thinking of keeping the foot landing close to the body. It doesn't matter whether you're heel striking, forefoot striking, midfoot striking, that really almost is a byproduct of speed, and a few other bits and pieces as well. But for most people, you're going to heel strike the majority of the time, but it's more important that you actually land relatively close to your body, so you're not overstriding on each stride, landing on a very straight leg, which again shunts a lot of forces up. And basically good technique will then allow you to dissipate the forces on landing better and spread the load across the areas that they're supposed to be spread across. So there you have it. We're looking at the role of your glutes. Your glutes need to be strong to help stabilise the pelvis and therefore the torso. tighten up your arm swing so it's a backward forward movement versus out to the side. Improve the posterior knee stability stuff, and that's something we work a lot in the clinic. And then finally look at your technique. There's a load of material out there in terms of running technique. Keep it simple. Practice it through your easy runs. Visit different technique aspects of it for maybe 10-20 seconds every few minutes. So it's keeping you present in your runs, and it's a great way to incorporate it into, so you get technique work regularly through the week. And there we are, that's some of the reasons why you might be experiencing back pain when you're running.